So the reviews for Rebel Moon are in. They're trickling in. Let's not say they're in yet because they're just coming in today. On Rotten Tomatoes, the movie currently sits at 23%, which is fairly rotten, with about 30 reviews. Earlier, when the reviews first started coming in, it was 9%, and it's been fluctuating, 17, 19%, going up a little at 23%. It's now a little bit higher than Snyder's previously worst reviewed film, Sucker Punch, which has stabilized at 22% with a 47% audience score. What I first watched of Snyder's was 300. Wow, that was back in 2006. That has a 61%, 89% audience score. Personally, I thought 300 is a perfect example of Snyder's strengths and weaknesses, in that he can deliver when it comes to visual spectacle, but when it comes to story and dialogue and writing in general, he just isn't that good. His highest rated movie, I'm just checking here, I think was Dawn of the Dead from 2004, which I haven't seen since 2004. So I can't really say. It didn't really stick with me that much, but I remember enjoying it. Probably the most recent movie of his that I've seen was Army of the Dead on Netflix, which is a 67%. A lot of his movies are right around that almost fresh, almost rotten, on the cusp. He's a cusper, with a few of them much, much lower, and a few of them a little bit higher. But mostly he's either just right around that. So that kind of feels right to me. Snyder as a director, again, delivers in some way: special effects, visual effects, cinematography, a lot of cool stuff going on. But then when it comes to story, it's just like, why don't you just hire better writers to do that half of the work, and then you can just focus on directing and making the movie look cool? And so Rebel Moon, this is what I wrote this article, when one of the first trailers came out. I thought it looked cool, but also would probably not be good because it's a Snyder movie, because it's a made-for-Netflix movie, because it's a two-part movie, which just seems like, hey, I didn't know how to edit my story down into a one-part movie, so I made a two-part movie. It's like, either you're making a standalone film or you're going to make a trilogy, in my opinion. A trilogy means that you've got 3 acts, and each one deserves its own film. Two-part movies, I just don't understand. I think it's because, I don't know. I know that Dune, the first part of Dune was really good, and I think it's probably going to be better as 2 parts than it would have been as one really long movie. But at the same time, maybe this is just going to be longer than it needs to be. And I think the only reason I have faith in Dune, first of all, the director, Denis Villeneuve, I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He's a very talented director, and so I have more faith in his work than in Zack Snyder's. But also because the book by Frank Herbert felt very rushed in its conclusion. You sort of had this great opening to that book. Lots of interesting stuff happens. A lot of great world building. You establish the society of the Fremen on Arrakis, and then you get to the end with the final conflict, and it's just over, and it's like there's nothing. It's just they fast forward through what could have been this epic battle, and so I understand that putting that in a movie makes sense. Could Dune have been one movie still? Probably. A long movie, but one movie. But Rebel Moon looks like, let's take Zack Snyder's worst impulses and free him from any sort of constraints. Some of these auteurs, some of these, directors who get it, they get enough influence and power and all that they can kind of do what they want, and they don't do. Their work isn't as good because of it. It's sort of like George R.R. Martin. Once he was famous enough that he could just ignore what his editors wanted, his books got bloated, and obviously with Winds of Winter have gotten so bloated and out of control that they're just maybe never going to even come out. Constraint actually can be the best thing that's ever happened to an artist. That's why some directors do their best work when they don't have very much money and the budgets on their films are very low. They're forced to be more creative. When you have a director who is under some kind of guidelines and restraints, maybe you can rein in their worst impulses or their excesses Rebel Moon, a 2-part movie made for Netflix with Zack Snyder completely off the leash. For some of his fans, this might be like a dream come true, but it also might mean that this movie is going to deserve its, let's see, has it changed? 23%, still 23%. I've requested screeners. I'm hoping that I like this movie. I really prefer liking the movies I spend my time watching than disliking them. And I would love nothing more than to watch this and think, oh yeah, these critics are crazy. Like they've missed the point of this completely. Like this was a fun movie. But let's just read through some of these. Simon Abrams at RogerEbert.com. Rebel Moon often looks more like an animated pitch for a movie than an actual movie with human characters, urgent drama, emotional stakes, and so forth. The Guardian. Snyder mistakes exposition for world building. The lugubriously delivered reams of backstory, removing the audience from the fantasy rather than immersing them in it. Sounds like Snyder. It's a film populated by some of the Justice League Snyder Cut filmmakers' worst impulses, a mess of imagery, some of it attempting to shock, congregated largely around the idea of what might look good in a trailer. Ooh. A movie that feels like a million isolated storyboards without a single thing welding them together. That's IndieWire's David Elric. The previous one was Clarice Lowry from The Independent. Mark Olson from the Los Angeles Times says, the film is too invested in table setting to be fully enjoyed on its own, at times feeling more like a studio presentation deck than a piece of organic storytelling. This all sounds like Snyder's, worst impulses, making a movie that's visually cool, but doesn't have that sort of the fiber that holds together a story. Here's David Rooney from The Hollywood Reporter. Just seconds into the leaden sci-fi saga, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, it's clear the director is back to indulging his worst tendency for self-serious bombast. All right, we come to our first positive review, although it's a 6 out of 10, so that's not very positive. This is Alistair Ryder from Looper.com. It doesn't work entirely, but there's a thrill to seeing a movie operating on this scale that hasn't been sanitized within an inch of its life. Okay. Another negative one from Eric Langberg and from Everything's Interesting. A Child of Fire shamelessly draws influences from a number of other sources without bothering to come up with a single original idea. Chris Bumbry of Joe Blow's Movie Network is more positive, saying, while undeniably derivative, more of Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai than Star Wars, Rebel Moon is nonetheless wildly entertaining and a very solid space opera. Tessa Smith from Mama's Geeky. This is a positive, but the rating is 2.5 out of 5, so I don't know how 50% translates to positive on Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes is all kinds of screwed up, by the way. It's just convenient to have all the reviews listed in one place, but it's not reliable. 2.5 out of 5 is an F. Like, that's not a... Okay, whatever. I'd rather have a 3-hour-long complete movie than a 2+ hour long half a movie. Very hard to judge without a conclusion, but I'm a sucker for a slow-motion action sequence, and there are a lot of them. Of course there are. Plus, Ed Skrein, I never knew how to say that, and Sofia Boutella eat up their scenes. Cool. More Zack Snyder's Dune than Star Wars. The filmmaker's opus isn't likely to win over new fans, but is a treat for those who appreciate his work. Boutella, Fisher, and Bay are the real standouts. I do wish the 2-part movie craze would end. That's Grace Randolph from Beyond the Trailer. And Fico Cangiano from Cine Express. Rebel Moon is Zack Snyder's fun-loving tribute to the likes of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Seven Samurai, etc. It looks, sounds, and plays great, and even though it takes some time to take off, we'll definitely have you on board for part 2. And those are just some of the reviews right now, currently, for Rebel Moon. So, not all bad, mostly bad. Even some of the good ones actually gave it a bad score. But it's possible that this will be a fun movie regardless. It comes out on December 21st, so we still have about a week before that's on Netflix. I think there's some limited theatrical stuff. This weekend. So I don't think that's playing here. We're not in a big city where we get limited releases. So no, I don't see it. So I guess I'm gonna have to either get screeners or wait like everybody else for next week's release on Netflix. If you've seen this, let me know what you thought of it. And if you haven't, I don't know, say something in the comments anyways. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Have a lovely weekend. Peace.